Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The crystal spires of Valus, the diplomatic heart of the Zoryn alliance on the planet Clythera, soared skyward, shimmering like captive stars under an ethereal blue glow. At the pinnacle of the Peace Tower, Captain Nathan Voss stood resolute, arms crossed, his short black hair neatly trimmed, his piercing gaze sweeping the room. His Terran military uniform hugged his athletic frame, exuding an understated authority. Across from him stood Kaelith, daughter of Zoryn's Supreme Commander Therion Zev. Her silver skin gleamed like liquid metal, her crimson eyes burned like the core of a dying star, and her long, metallic hair flowed like a galaxy unbound. The air between them was thick, as if a single spark could ignite the entire chamber. "I've said it before, Lady Kaelith," Nathan declared, his deep voice resonant with unwavering authority. "The Terran Alliance will not supply antimatter technology for your experiments in the Forbidden Zone. That region is a hazard, and we have reasons to keep it untouched." Kaelith tilted her head, a faint smile revealing sharp teeth. "Do you know who I am, human?" She spat the word human, like a curse. "My father commands the largest fleet in this galaxy. One word from me, and your pathetic little civilization will crumble to ash." Nathan didn't blink. "I know exactly who your father is, and I also know he signed the treaty banning all activity in the Forbidden Zone, just like our government. You'd do well to learn respect for the law, Kaelith." The penthouse chamber, adorned with shimmering holographic tapestries and glowing vine clusters, seemed to shrink under the weight of their tension. Kaelith stepped forward, her black metallic war dress clinging to her form, its bold cuts revealing her radiant silver skin. "You're nothing but a lowly soldier, an ant daring to stand before me," she hissed. "My father will crush your career for this insolence." Nathan offered a faint smile, his eyes locked on hers. "Your father is a man of reason. It seems you need a lesson in respect." Suddenly, Kaelith lost control. In a surge of fury, she spat at Nathan, a shimmering silver liquid striking his cheek. "You dare defy me?" she roared. "You humans are nothing but vermin!" The room fell into a deathly silence. Two Zoryn guards near the door froze, unwilling to intervene. Nathan didn't wipe the spittle away. His eyes, once blazing with resolve, now turned ice-cold. Without a word, he acted. In a flash, he spun, seizing Kaelith's wrist with strength honed through years of military training. Before she could react, he forced her into a nearby velvet chair, using decorative cords from the nearest curtain to bind her wrists and ankles tightly. From his pocket, he produced a handkerchief, swiftly tying it around her mouth to silence her curses. In less than a minute it was done. Nathan stood tall, wiping the spittle from his cheek with the back of his hand, his gaze cold as he looked down at the Supreme Commander's daughter. "Lady Kaelith," he said, his voice calm as a frozen lake, "it seems we need to discuss manners and consequences. But first, you'll listen." Kaelith's eyes widened, not with fear, but with a strange sensation that quickened her pulse. For the first time in her life, she, revered for her lineage and power, had been subdued by a human who didn't flinch before her. Strangest of all, somewhere deep within, she felt drawn to his unyielding resolve. The chamber door hissed open. Supreme Commander Therion Zev strode in, his towering figure commanding, his silver skin brighter than his daughter's, his crimson eyes like molten forges. He paused, his gaze sweeping the scene, Kaelith bound in the chair, Nathan standing before her, composed as if he'd just completed a routine drill. "What is this?" Therion asked, his voice low but laced with a power that made the air hum. Nathan stood straighter, offering a respectful nod. "Supreme Commander, I apologize for this unusual situation. Your daughter demanded antimatter technology for an expedition into the Forbidden Zone. When I refused, she attempted to bribe me, then insulted me by spitting in my face. My actions were to maintain order and demonstrate that humans do not tolerate disrespect." Therion regarded him, his gaze shifting to Kaelith. "Is this true, Kaelith?" "He exaggerates," Kaelith protested, but her eyes avoided her father's piercing stare. Security cameras will confirm my account, Nathan added, unflinching. Therian sighed, gesturing to Nathan. Release her, Captain? Nathan approached, untying Kaelith with precise movements. As he touched her wrist, he noticed her silver skin was strangely warm, like metal heated by sunlight. Kaelith stood, adjusting her war dress, her gaze flickering to Nathan, not with hostility, but with an unreadable curiosity. The Zoryn Alliance apologizes for my daughter's behavior, Therian said, his voice formal. She will face appropriate consequences. Kaelith opened her mouth to protest, but a single look from her father silenced her. Captain Voss, Therian continued, I wish to speak with you privately. As Kaelith left, she glanced back at Nathan one last time, her eyes holding an emotion she didn't yet understand, a mix of anger and fascination. In the Supreme Commander's private office, crystal walls glimmered, refracting light into countless tiny rainbows. Therian Zev sat across from Nathan Voss, hands clasped, his crimson eyes like molten forges, as if peering into Nathan's soul. The air was heavy, every word measured. Binding my daughter was unorthodox, Captain, Therian began, his voice low, not judgmental, but carrying a force that made the room hum faintly. For a human officer, it was a bold act. Nathan sat upright, his sharp gaze unwavering. With all due respect, sir, he replied, his voice steady and firm. In human culture, spitting in someone's face is a grave insult. My response was controlled, not violent. He emphasized each word, like a soldier reporting before battle, betraying no hesitation. Therian nodded, a subtle smile flickering, barely noticeable. Interesting, he said, a spark of intrigue in his eyes. In Zoryn culture, physical restraint carries profound meaning. It's reserved for close kin or respected adversaries. Perhaps you didn't know this. His voice was light, but each word landed like a stone in still water, rippling outward. Nathan felt a flush of warmth but kept his tone steady. I didn't, sir, he admitted, his eyes fixed on Therian. I apologize if I caused a cultural misunderstanding. Therian waved a hand, dismissing the apology. No need, he said, his voice deeper, his gaze sharpening. Cultural differences make humans fascinating. But I'm concerned about Kaelith. Her obsession with the Forbidden Zone is more than mere impulse. Nathan raised an eyebrow, his voice cautious. Can you share more, sir? Therian shook his head, his gaze distant, as if peering into a secret not yet ready to be unveiled. Not yet, he said. But I propose you work with Kaelith. She respects strength, Captain, and you've demonstrated it. Perhaps you can teach her about humans, about the resilience I've always admired. Therian's words carried weight, not a command, but an invitation laced with intent. Nathan left the office, his mind racing. Therian wasn't merely apologizing or resolving a conflict. He was orchestrating something larger, and Nathan, willingly or not, was now entangled. The crystallit corridor bathed his Terran uniform in star-like reflections. He adjusted his collar and strode forward, each step resounding confidently on the glowing stone floor. The next morning, an official order arrived from Terran Command, approved through diplomatic channels. Nathan would serve as Kaelith's cultural and security advisor for 2 weeks, per Therian's request. He wasn't surprised, but a sense of unease lingered. Entering the Zoryn Embassy's training hall, he paused, his gaze sweeping the space. The arena blended with a crystal garden, glowing vines floating in the air, blue light shimmering on the polished stone floor. Kaelith stood ready, her posture erect, clad in a black silver-trimmed combat suit, her long hair tied back, her crimson eyes regarding him with wary caution. Captain Voss, she said, her voice neutral, but her eyes glinting with mischief. It seems my father has manipulated us both. Nathan approached, maintaining a professional distance, his gaze locked on her. I'm here under orders, he said, his voice even. Your cultural and security advisor. Where do we start? Kaelith smiled, a sharp smile tinged with amusement. Learning human combat, she said, stepping closer, her eyes probing. The way you bound me yesterday, it was effective. Her words were light, but they carried a challenge, like a spark waiting to ignite. Nathan's pulse quickened, but he maintained his calm exterior. "That wasn't combat," he replied, his voice firm. "It was control." Kaelith tilted her head, her crimson eyes flashing. "A fascinating distinction," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "In Zoryn culture, such restraint signals deep respect. I didn't expect it from a human." The air hummed, an invisible current crackling between them. Nathan cleared his throat, keeping his voice steady. "We need boundaries, Kaelith," he said, his eyes unwavering. "Like not spitting in someone's face when you don't get your way." Kaelith laughed, the sound sharp and resonant, like crystal bells echoing in the chamber. "Fair enough," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I propose a deal. I teach you Zoryn customs, you teach me human ways. Starting with combat. Zoryns believe understanding begins with the body." Nathan nodded, agreeing. They began. He taught her the basic Terran stance, feet grounded, hands ready, each movement precise as a machine. Kaelith countered with Zoryn agility, moving like a shadow, gliding past him with speed that made the air hiss. During one drill, she suddenly locked his arm from behind, her movements fluid and powerful. Nathan felt the strange warmth of her silver skin, like living metal, sparking against his own like a faint electric charge. "In our culture," Kaelith whispered near his ear, her voice low and intimate, "physical contact in training is communication. Every touch carries meaning." Her breath was light, but enough to make Nathan's heart pound. He broke free, spinning to face her, his eyes sharp. "What are you trying to say right now?" he asked, his voice low, challenging. Kaelith smiled, her crimson eyes gleaming. "Curiosity," she replied, her voice a whisper. "Humans are warmer than I thought. Your body heat, it's intriguing." Her final words sparked like a flint, heating the air between them. Nathan stepped back, striving to maintain professionalism. "Focus on Zoryn defensive stances," he said, his voice firm, though his eyes lingered on her. Kaelith chuckled softly, complying, shifting into a fluid posture, like a deadly dance. They continued, each movement a wordless dialogue, each touch a test. During a break, they sat side by side on a crystal bench under the glowing light, the air softening but still charged with tension. "You're not what I expected," Kaelith said, her crimson eyes softening, her voice sincere. "Humans are said to be brutal, simplistic. But you're complex." Nathan looked at her, surprised by her candor. "You too, Kaelith," he replied, his voice low. "Maybe we both have something to learn." She tilted her head, her gaze tracing him, as if reading a mystery. "What does my father want from this?" she asked, her voice low, almost to herself. Nathan didn't answer immediately, his eyes scanning the room, where crystal light fell like scattered stars. "I'm not sure," he said, his voice even. "But I know he doesn't act without purpose." Kaelith nodded, her crimson eyes flashing with understanding. "Then we'll play his game," she said, her voice sharp. "But on our terms." Nathan gave a faint smile, his gaze locking with hers. "Agreed," he said, his voice low, like a vow. The air between them thrummed, not just with challenge, but with a new connection, unforeseen by either. A week passed, and training sessions with Kaelith became the centerpiece of Nathan Voss's mission. Each day, they traded combat techniques and cultural insights, from Terran strikes to Zoryn gestures, from diplomatic protocols to tales of their homeworlds. The initial tension, once sharp as a blade, gave way to a strange bond, though either acknowledged it. The air between them still thrummed, like a taut string ready to snap into an unexpected note. Today, Nathan entered the Zoryn embassy's training hall, crystal light bathing his steel-gray Terran uniform. He paused, his gaze sweeping the space. Kaelith wasn't in combat gear. Instead, she wore a flowing silver gown, its pattern shimmering like constellations moving across the fabric, clinging to her form like a living galaxy. "No training today?" Nathan asked, his voice even, though he was suddenly conscious of his plain uniform, lacking the splendor of Zoryn attire. Kaelith turned, her crimson eyes sweeping over him, her appraisal unguarded. "My father is hosting the crystal bonding ceremony tonight," she said, her voice low, carrying the weight of an ancient ritual. "All major diplomatic families will attend. As my cultural advisor, your presence is required." Nathan raised an eyebrow, his gaze locking with hers. "I'm not prepared for a diplomatic event," he said, his voice firm, though a spark of curiosity flickered in his eyes. Kaelith smiled, a sharp smile tinged with mischief. She gestured to a package on a nearby crystal bench. "I've prepared attire for you," she said. "The ceremony begins in 3 hours. But first I need to show you something." Her words were light, but they carried a deeper meaning, an invitation impossible to refuse. Nathan nodded, following her through unfamiliar embassy corridors. The glowing stone floor beneath them and the crystal walls reflecting blue light gave the sensation of walking among stars. Kaelith stopped before a shimmering door, as if studded with thousands of tiny crystals. "This is the crystal chamber," she said, her voice reverent, her crimson eyes softening. "Where Zoryns prepare for significant rituals." She pushed the door open, and the room unfolded like a miniature universe. Walls faded into infinite space, a misty blue glow enveloping everything. At the center, a glowing pool pulsed with energy beneath, like a living heart. "The crystal bonding ceremony is more than a diplomatic event," Kaelith explained, stepping toward the pool, her silver gown shimmering in the light. "It connects participants to the energy of ancient Zoryn's crystal core. Before attending, we must purify our essence in the crystal pool." Her voice was low, as if sharing a millennia-old secret. Nathan approached, feeling the pool's intrinsic pulse, like an invisible life force. "What does this involve, exactly?" he asked, his voice low, his gaze probing. Kaelith turned, her crimson eyes flashing with mischief. "Nothing invasive," she reassured, her voice light. "Just place your hands in the water, focus on clarity and truth." Nathan knelt, hesitating. He dipped his hands into the pool. A cool surge flooded through him, spreading through his body, his mind clearing as if a fog had lifted. "What is this?" he asked, his voice distant, as if speaking from another place. "It enhances awareness," Kaelith replied, kneeling beside him, her hands entering the pool. "Of yourself and others." As her hands touched the water, Nathan felt a strange resonance, as if her consciousness brushed against his, gentle yet intense. Kaelith's eyes widened, her crimson gaze flashing. "I didn't expect," she began, then paused, her eyes locking with his. "A human mind, it's more compatible with the water than I thought." They sat there, hands in the water, silent. Their presence transcended physical boundaries, like two energies intertwining. Nathan sensed her, not just Kaelith, but a complex soul, brimming with ambition and mystery. "The Forbidden Zone," he said suddenly, the words escaping before he could think. "That's why, isn't it? You need to go there." Kaelith flinched, her crimson eyes growing distant. She sighed, her voice low. "The water reveals truth," she said, her gaze drifting to the pool. "Yes, the Forbidden Zone holds the core of an ancient Zoryn crystal, destroyed in the last war. If I don't complete the ritual there before my 25th cycle, I'll lose my claim to lead my clan." Nathan tilted his head, his gaze sharp. "Why didn't you just say so? Why the secrecy?" Kaelith gave a bitter laugh, the sound sharp as shattering crystal. "The war treaty bans Zoryns from accessing sacred sites," she said. "Humans fear we'd use crystal energy to amplify psychic power." "And would you?" Nathan pressed, his voice firm. Kaelith met his gaze, her crimson eyes flaring. "Not in the way you fear," she replied. "The ritual is personal, not militaristic. But fear blinds diplomacy." Her words were sharp, laced with frustration, like an old wound. A clear chime rang out, signaling the ceremony's approach. Kaelith stood, adjusting her gown, its silver sheen flowing like a river of stars. "We should prepare," she said, her gaze sweeping Nathan, brimming with desire and resolve. He rose, a spark running down his spine. "This ceremony matters to you, doesn't it?" he asked, his voice low. Kaelith paused, turning to face him. More than you know, she said, her voice deep, her crimson eyes locking with his. It's not just a ritual. It's the first step to proving myself, to my clan, my father, and myself. She stepped closer, crystal light illuminating her silver skin. You'll stand with me tonight, Captain. Not because of orders, but because I want you there. Nathan didn't respond immediately, his gaze tracing her. Kaelith's sincerity caught him off guard, but he maintained his calm exterior. I'll be there, he said, his voice even, though his eyes held something more, not just duty, but a promise. Kaelith smiled, no longer mischievous, but soft, like the glow from the crystal pool. They left the chamber, moving through the shimmering corridor. The chime echoed, the pulse of the crystal pool seeming to follow. Nathan felt his bond with Kaelith, though undefined, growing stronger. The crystal bonding ceremony was more than a Zoryn ritual. It would test them both, blurring the lines between human and Zoryn, between duty and desire. The grand hall of the Zoryn embassy shimmered like a miniature universe, its ceiling a replica of Velus's night sky, with millions of artificial stars twinkling like the galaxy's breath. Diplomats from across the stars gathered, their opulent attire forming a vibrant tapestry, from the glowing silks of the Andari to the liquid metal armor of the Kryn delegation. Nathan Voss stood amid the crowd, clad in a deep blue Zoryn ceremonial outfit with silver trim, its unfamiliar design hugging his frame yet surprisingly comfortable. He adjusted his collar, his sharp gaze sweeping the room, feeling the weight of the occasion. Captain Voss. Tharian Zev approached, his towering figure commanding, his silver skin brighter than the starlight, his crimson eyes like molten forges. He bowed formally. I'm pleased you're joining us for this sacred event. Nathan returned the gesture, bowing as Kaelith had taught him, his movements precise. The honor is mine, Supreme Commander, he said, his voice low and steady. Kaelith appeared at his side, her silver gown shimmering like a galaxy in motion, each step a dance. Her hand lightly rested on his arm, the warmth of her silver skin seeping through the fabric. Don't worry, she whispered, her voice low and intimate. The ritual is simple. We stand in the circle of light, letting the crystal essence flow through us. Nathan tilted his head, his gaze probing. What does that mean exactly? Kaelith smiled, her crimson eyes flashing with mischief. You'll see. Tharian stepped to the center of the hall, raising a hand. The stars on the ceiling blazed brighter, as if awakened. We gather beneath the core of our ancestors' crystal, he proclaimed, his voice resonating, cutting through the crowd. To bind our souls to their wisdom, our hearts to their strength, our minds to their vision. 3 massive beams of light materialized, representing the 3 Zoryn crystal cores, swirling above, weaving intricate patterns of radiance. Those who seek bonding, step into the circle of light, Tharian commanded, his voice deep, like the rumble of the cosmos. Kaelith guided Nathan into a glowing circle on the floor, joining other pairs, mostly Zoryns, their silver skin gleaming under the light. Now what? Nathan whispered, his eyes locked on her. Now, Captain, Kaelith replied, her voice low, her eyes twinkling. We discover if we're truly compatible. The 3 crystal cores aligned, and the light flared, a blue column enveloping them. Nathan felt a vibration surge through his body, like the hum of a perfectly tuned engine. Beside him, Kaelith's silver skin glowed from within, tiny star-like specks emerging, breathtakingly beautiful. The connection hit, sudden and intense. Kaelith's thoughts, memories, and emotions flooded Nathan, a river of light. He saw her childhood on the Zoryn homeworld, running through crystal fields, her frustration at being underestimated as the Supreme Commander's daughter, her burning desire to prove herself through the Forbidden Zone ritual. She saw him, grueling training years on Earth, his body exhausted after each drill, his devotion to duty, the loneliness of a position that distanced him from others. She felt his initial irritation with her arrogance, then curiosity, and now a deeper, undefined emotion. He felt her fascination with his physical strength, the thrill of being subdued by him in the meeting room, and her growing respect for his unyielding principles. The light faded. Nathan stared into Kaelith's eyes, both breathing heavily, hearts pounding. Around them, other pairs were similarly dazed, but curious. Even disapproving glances from some Zoryn diplomats made Nathan realize they were drawing attention. "We're making a scene," he said, his voice low, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "Yes," Kaelith replied, her hand finding his. The touch was electric, making him tense. "We should go." They wove through the crowd, crystal light casting long shadows on the floor. Tharion's gaze flickered toward them, a subtle nod carrying an unreadable meaning, as if he'd anticipated this. In the embassy's corridor, either spoke. The air between them thrummed with unspoken understanding. At the door to Kaelith's private quarters, she paused, facing him. Her silver skin shimmered, her crimson eyes softening, profound. "The crystal bonding reveals truth," she said softly, her voice a whisper. "What you saw, what you felt, it's real." "I know," Nathan replied, his voice low. His fingers hesitated, then brushed her cheek. Her silver skin was smoother than human skin, warm with her heartbeat. Kaelith leaned into the touch, her eyes locked on his. "In Zoryn culture," she said, her voice low, "a connection this strong is a rare gift. It forms a bond beyond all boundaries." Nathan felt the truth of her words, amplified by their shared memories from the ritual. "And what does that mean for us?" he asked, though he already knew the answer through the current between them. Kaelith didn't reply. She drew him into her quarters, the door closing with a soft hiss. The room's gentle light enveloped them, reminiscent of the ceremonial hall but more intimate, just the two of them. "Human customs differ from ours," she said, her fingers tracing the silver trim of his attire, her movements slow, exploratory. "But some things are universal." Her voice was deep, carrying unmasked desire. Nathan felt the final barrier dissolve. Duty, politics, species differences, they no longer mattered. The ritual had stripped away pretense, leaving only truth between them. He took her hand, the warmth of her silver skin flowing through him, like the energy from the crystal pool. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low, his eyes searching for confirmation. Kaelith smiled, not mischievous but sincere. "More certain than ever," she replied, drawing him closer. The room faded into a misty blue glow, as if the crystal essence itself bore witness. Their bond, forged in the ritual, now blazed, not just understanding, but a new fire, ready to challenge the boundaries of their worlds. Nathan awoke in Kaelith's private quarters, the soft crystal light illuminating her silver skin, shimmering like liquid metal. They lay side by side, the crystal bond still thrumming, a wordless melody echoing in their minds. Kaelith rested her head on his chest, her metallic hair spilling out like a galaxy. "The crystal bonding," she whispered, her voice low, carrying the weight of an ancient secret. "It's rare even among Zoryns. Between species, it's almost unheard of." Nathan traced his fingers along her shoulder, feeling the strange warmth of her silver skin. "Will it fade?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over her, seeking truth. Kaelith looked up, her crimson eyes locking with his. "The intensity may lessen," she replied, her voice certain, "but the connection won't. That's why some are concerned. A bond like this has political consequences." Her words were sharp, like a blade hidden in velvet, making the air heavy. Reality crashed in, shattering the intimate moment. Nathan sat up, pieces clicking into place in his mind. "Your father knew this would happen," he said, his voice low, his gaze sharp. "He orchestrated our participation in the ceremony." Kaelith nodded, her crimson eyes flashing with understanding. "He's more cunning than people realize," she said, rising, adjusting her silver gown. "But the Forbidden Zone, it's more urgent now. The bond has triggered my biological clock. I must complete the ritual in days, not months." "And if you don't?" Nathan asked, unease rising. Kaelith turned, her gaze grave, like a collapsing star's core. "Our bond will destabilize," she replied, her voice low. "It could harm us both, mentally, physically, everything." Her words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through Nathan's mind. An urgent signal blared, cutting through the air. Nathan sprang up, activating his communicator. A holographic image of Colonel Elena Carter appeared, her face stern. "Voss, have you read the new orders?" she asked, direct, her voice sharp as steel. Nathan nodded, still processing the directive received that morning. "Just did, Colonel," he replied, his gaze flickering to Kaelith, standing nearby, her crimson eyes blazing with resolve. The orders were clear. He was assigned as cultural liaison and security advisor to Kaelith for a special mission to the Forbidden Zone. "This isn't a standard assignment," Carter said, her gaze icy through the hologram. "Therion requested you specifically. Your actions with his daughter made an impression." Nathan glanced at Kaelith, who stood tall, her silver gown gleaming like armor. "Colonel, there's something bigger at play, isn't there?" he asked, his voice low, probing. Carter nodded, her eyes unwavering. "We suspect illegal activity in the Forbidden Zone, possibly tied to the Orion Syndicate," she said. "This is a chance to gather intel, but it's high risk. Be careful, Voss." The hologram vanished, leaving Nathan with a mix of exhilaration and unease, like standing at the edge of a precipice. At the Zoryn embassy, Nathan and Kaelith prepared for the mission. The hangar buzzed with activity, engineers checking systems, Zoryn guards standing watch, their crimson eyes scanning every corner. As they approached the ship Concordia, a young Zoryn officer, Valthor, stepped forward, his eyes anxious. "Lady Kaelith," he whispered, glancing at Nathan, his voice trembling. "There's something you need to know." Kaelith stiffened, her crimson eyes flaring. "What do you mean, Valthor?" she asked, her voice sharp as a blade. Valthor swallowed hard, his gaze wavering. "Some Zoryn Council members oppose this mission," he said, his voice low. "They see your bond with a human as an insult. They might act." Kaelith tilted her head, her eyes blazing like forges. "Act?" she repeated, her voice cold. Valthor bowed his head, his voice shaking. "I heard of a plan to sabotage the Concordia," he said. "I don't know details, but please be cautious." Nathan's fists clenched, his mind racing. "If there's a traitor," he said, his eyes locking with Kaelith's, "we need to check the ship before launch." Kaelith nodded, her gaze reflecting newfound trust. "You're right," she said, her voice low. "I didn't expect such instincts from you, Captain." They hurried to the engineering bay, blue light from control panels illuminating their tense faces. With the engineering team, they inspected every system. Minutes before launch, Nathan spotted an anomaly attached to the energy core, a compact pulse bomb, small but powerful enough to destroy the ship in deep space. "This isn't Zoryn tech," Nathan said, his voice tight, hands carefully disarming the device, sweat beading on his brow. "It's Orion Syndicate." Kaelith stared, her eyes a mix of shock and fury. "How did they infiltrate our ship?" she growled, her crimson gaze blazing. Nathan met her eyes, his voice icy. "Someone on the Zoryn Council is working with them," he said. "And we'll find out who." They reported to Therion, stationed at the command center. He listened, his crimson eyes darkening, like a compressed star's core. "I'll order an immediate investigation," Therion said, his voice low, carrying a force that made the air hum. "Proceed with the mission, but stay vigilant. The enemy isn't just out there." The Concordia was cleared, but Nathan and Kaelith knew they were stepping into a far more dangerous game. The air between them thrummed, not just with the crystal bond, but with a new trust forged in peril. As the ship prepared to launch, Nathan stood beside Kaelith in the observation deck, control panel lights illuminating their faces. "We're being hunted," he said, his voice low, his gaze sweeping the display screens. Kaelith nodded, her crimson eyes flashing with resolve. "Then we'll be the hunters," she replied, her voice sharp, like a blade ready to strike. Nathan gave a faint smile, his eyes locking with hers. "Let's hunt, Kaelith." His words were a vow, and in that moment, they were more than allies, they were one, in mission and in the fire burning between their souls. The Concordia glided past the hazy boundary of the Forbidden Zone, cosmic dust sparkling like shattered stars against its energy shields. On the observation deck, Nathan Voss stood beside Kaelith, feeling her exhilaration through their crystal bond, a fiery pulse in his chest. Blue light from the control screens bathed their faces, reflecting their resolve. "We're approaching the coordinates." Captain Marcus Kane, a grizzled Terran veteran with salt and pepper hair and a steely gaze, announced. "But sensors detect unusual activity. An illegal mining operation, far from the crystal core." "Mining?" Therian Zev, who had insisted on joining the mission, stepped forward, his silver skin brighter in the light, his crimson eyes darkening with concern. "Impossible. This zone is forbidden to both our species." Nathan crossed his arms, his sharp gaze scanning the screens. "Clearly, someone's ignoring that," he said, his voice hard as steel. "The equipment signatures match Orion Syndicate tech. Likely crystal poachers selling on the black market." Kaelith's grip tightened on Nathan's hand, her silver nails grazing his skin. Her crimson eyes blazed, like a star on the verge of supernova. "They're desecrating our sacred ground," she growled, her voice sharp as a blade, trembling with fury. Nathan felt her anger through the bond, hot and piercing. "We need to be careful," he said, his voice low, his eyes locking with hers. "If it's the Syndicate, they'll be armed to the teeth." Kaelith turned to Kane, her gaze fixed on the screens. "Is the ritual site intact?" she asked, her voice tense. Kane checked the data, his fingers flying over the controls. "Based on your coordinates, the main chamber is untouched," he replied. "But the traditional entrance collapsed due to mining." Therian paled, his silver skin dimming. "Without the proper entrance," he said, his voice low and heavy, "the ritual cannot be completed. The crystal energy must be accessed in sequence." Nathan placed a hand on Kaelith's shoulder, feeling her taut muscles. "We'll find another way," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Humans excel at adapting." Kaelith looked at him, her crimson eyes softening, a spark of hope flickering. "The ritual hasn't changed in millennia," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. Nathan gave a faint, confident smile. "Then it's time for it to evolve." Nathan, Kaelith, Therian, and a squad of Zoryn guards boarded a shuttle, heading for the crystal core. As they approached, the scale of destruction became clear. The ritual entrance was now a massive scar, littered with mining equipment, roaring machines drilling into the crystal, leaving shimmering fragments like the planet's blood. But before they could land, a series of explosions rocked the shuttle. "We're under attack!" the pilot shouted, the ship's shields flaring under energy fire. Nathan grabbed Kaelith, pulling her to the floor as another blast tilted the shuttle. "The Syndicate knew we were coming," he said, his voice tight, his gaze scanning the observation window. "Someone tipped them off." Kaelith gritted her teeth, her crimson eyes blazing. "Traitors!" she hissed, her nails digging into his arm. Kane deployed the security team, ordering a diversionary attack from a distance. Nathan, Kaelith, Therian, and 2 guards approached from the opposite side, their shuttle skimming low through cosmic dust. Landing on the crystal core's surface, the blue light from the crystal beneath pulsed like an ancient creature's heartbeat. Kaelith knelt, touching the surface, her crimson eyes widening. "I can feel the energy," she whispered, her voice awestruck. "It's stronger than I imagined after millennia." But as they advanced toward the ritual chamber, the shadows ahead stirred. A Syndicate mercenary squad ambushed them, energy weapons unleashing deadly beams, tearing through the air. Nathan reacted instantly, shoving Kaelith behind a crystal boulder, drawing his plasma pistol. 2 shots, 2 enemies down, precise as a machine. "Stay behind me!" he shouted, his gaze icy, scanning the battlefield. Kaelith ignored him. She activated an energy blade from her wrist, its blue light flaring like a flame. With Zoryn agility, she launched into the fray, her blades slicing through Syndicate armor like paper. "I don't need protecting!" she roared, felling an enemy in a flash, her movements fluid as a storm. They fought in tandem, Nathan with Terran precision, each shot a kill, Kaelith a whirlwind, her blade carving arcs of light in the dark. Through their crystal bond, they moved in perfect sync, sensing each other's intentions without words. Nathan took out a sniper. Kaelith simultaneously cut down an attacker from behind him. When the last enemy fell, both were panting, blood and sweat mingling on their faces. "Not bad for a human," Kaelith said, her crimson eyes twinkling, a faint smile breaking through. Nathan wiped blood from his cheek, returning a faint smile. "You're not bad either," he replied, his voice low, his eyes locking with hers. In that moment, amid the wreckage and bodies, their bond shone clearer than ever, not just allies, but parts of a whole. Therion and the guards approached, his gaze sweeping the carnage. "We must hurry," he said, his voice low, laced with urgency. "The Syndicate won't stop here." Nathan nodded, his eyes sharpening. "They know we're heading for the ritual chamber," he said. "They'll do anything to stop us." Kaelith took his hand, her silver skin's warmth flowing through him. "They'll fail," she said, her voice sharp, her crimson eyes blazing with resolve. Nathan squeezed her hand, his gaze unwavering. "Together," he said, his voice low, a vow. Ahead, the ritual chamber loomed in the darkness, its blue light pulsing, beckoning. But Nathan knew the path forward was more than a ritual. It was a fight for survival, where their bond would be tested to its limits. The ritual chamber lay deep within the crystal core, but its entrance was a ruin. A massive Syndicate mining rig blocked the path, its broken drills embedded in the crystal, leaving shimmering scars like dried blood. "We can't get through," a Zoryn guard reported, his voice tense, his crimson eyes wavering. Therion shook his head, his silver skin paling, his gaze despairing. "Without the 7 gates in sequence," he said, his voice low and heavy, "the ritual cannot be completed. Tradition forbids it." Nathan scanned the area, his mind analyzing like a machine. "What if we forge a new path?" he said, his sharp gaze locking onto Therion. "Honor the spirit of the ritual, not its form." Therion opened his mouth to protest. "That's not our way," he began, but Kaelith cut him off, stepping forward, her crimson eyes blazing like a star's core. "He's right, Father," she said, her voice firm. "I feel the energy currents. They're disrupted by the mining, but they're still there. We can redirect them." She turned to Nathan, her eyes sparkling, as if seeing something beyond reality. "But I need your help," she said, her voice low, carrying the weight of their crystal bond. "Our bond has already begun to harmonize the energy." Nathan nodded without hesitation, his gaze resolute. "Lead the way," he said, his voice deep, like a vow. Under Kaelith's guidance, they moved across the crystal surface, their steps tracing a complex pattern, like an invisible dance only their bond understood. Through the bond, Nathan sensed the energy currents below, shimmering rivers of light, alive and vibrant. A miracle unfolded, the crystal beneath their feet blazed, responding to their synchronized movements. Pathways of light formed, weaving through the rubble, reconnecting damaged sections, guiding them to the ritual chamber. The Zoryn guards and Therion followed, their eyes wide with awe, but Nathan and Kaelith focused only on each other, each step a shared heartbeat. The ritual chamber emerged, a magnificent domed space, its walls encrusted with crystal that shimmered like a miniature galaxy. At its center stood a transparent stone pedestal, pulsing blue energy like the universe's heartbeat. "The crystal core," Therion whispered, his voice reverent, his crimson eyes wide. Kaelith took Nathan's hand, leading him to the pedestal, the warmth of her silver skin flowing through him. "Traditionally, the ritual is performed alone," she said, her eyes locked on his. "But our bond changes everything. I believe we must complete it together." They stood facing each other across the pedestal, hands clasped, fingers gripping tightly. As Kaelith's silver skin touched his, the chamber's energy surged, blue light swirling faster, like a cosmic storm. "Open your mind to me completely," Kaelith said softly, her voice deep, almost pleading. Nathan complied, lowering every barrier, letting his consciousness flow into hers. Their minds merged, like two rivers becoming one, powerful and inseparable. The pedestal pulsed in time with their shared heartbeat, glowing like a newborn star, its light enveloping them. In that moment of perfect harmony, Nathan understood the true meaning of their bond. It was not just physical, not just emotional, but a profound union, transcending species. He felt Kaelith's joy, her fierce love, her complete acceptance, as if she'd seen every shadow in his soul and chose to stay. He reciprocated, opening himself with equal intensity, letting her see his devotion, his loyalty, and his fear of losing her. But then, a sharp memory flashed through. Like a blade, Kaelith had known about the plot to sabotage the Concordia beforehand but kept silent, fearing he'd refuse the mission. The light faded, the ritual chamber falling silent. Nathan looked into Kaelith's eyes, seeing streaks of blue in his own reflected in her crimson gaze, a physical mark of their bond, etched into them forever. "The ritual is complete," Zoryn said, his voice awestruck, his gaze sweeping over them. "In a way unprecedented in Zoryn history." Kaelith smiled, her crimson eyes softening, but Nathan gripped her hand tighter, his gaze icy. "You knew about the bomb, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low, eyes unwavering. Kaelith stiffened, a flicker of panic in her eyes, but she didn't look away. I wasn't certain," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Just a suspicion from an unclear source. I couldn't risk losing this chance to come here." Through the bond, Nathan felt the truth in her words, but also her deep fear, not of exposure, but of losing him. Nathan exhaled, his gaze still locked on her. "We need to trust each other, Kaelith," he said, his voice firm but not angry. "If we don't, this bond will destroy us both." His words were sharp, but laced with care, like a warning from a comrade, not an enemy. Kaelith nodded, her crimson eyes softening, sincere. "I was wrong to stay silent," she said, her voice low. "It won't happen again." Zoryn approached, his crimson eyes sweeping over them, as if reading the tension. "Your bond is a gift," he said, his voice deep, carrying the weight of millennia of tradition. "But also a responsibility. Use it wisely." He turned, signaling the guards to prepare to leave the chamber, but his eyes flickered with something, not just pride, but calculation, as if he foresaw a greater future. Nathan and Kaelith lingered, hands still clasped, the blue light from the pedestal illuminating their faces. "We did it," she said, her voice soft, her crimson eyes sparkling. Nathan gave a faint smile, his gaze locking with hers. "We did," he repeated, emphasizing the word, affirming their unbreakable bond. But in his mind, he knew the challenges weren't over. The Syndicate was still out there, the traitor in the Zoryn Council remained unidentified, and their bond, though powerful, was now a double-edged sword. The ritual chamber stood silent, but the air thrummed, heralding an approaching storm. The ritual chamber shuddered with a massive explosion, the blue light of the crystal flickering like a dying breath. Rubble trembled, crystal dust falling like a shower of stars. Nathan led the way, pulling Kaelith through a narrow escape route, Zoryn and the two Zoryn guards close behind. As they emerged from the chamber, a Syndicate mercenary squad blocked their path, energy weapons blazing in the darkness. At their center stood Valthor, the Zoryn officer who had warned Kaelith, his crimson eyes now cold as ice, an energy rifle in hand. "You!" Kaelith roared, her crimson eyes blazing like a star's core. "You betrayed us!" She lunged, but Nathan threw an arm in front of her, his icy gaze locking onto Valthor. Valthor smirked, his voice sharp as a blade. "The Council doesn't want peace with humans," he said, his eyes flicking to Kaelith. "Your bond is a threat. The Syndicate paid well to ensure you never complete the ritual." Nathan stepped forward, plasma pistol in hand, his voice low and unwavering. "You chose the wrong side, Valthor." The air grew heavy, like the calm before a storm. Battle erupted, energy blasts tearing through the space. Nathan and Kaelith moved in perfect sync through their crystal bond, like two parts of a single machine. He gunned down two mercenaries, his shots precise as a machine. Kaelith glided through, her wrist-mounted energy blade carving arcs of light, felling three enemies in a flash, fluid as a whirlwind. Zoryn and the guards fought beside them, blue crystal light illuminating their silver skin. A mercenary aimed at Therion, but Nathan shot him down, the plasma round piercing armor. Kaelith felt Nathan's protection through the bond, her crimson eyes softening briefly before she slashed another enemy. Valthor, standing amid the chaos, aimed at Kaelith. Nathan dove, shoving her aside, the energy bolt grazing his shoulder, searing pain flaring. "Enough!" Nathan roared, firing a precise shot. The round struck Valthor's chest, and he collapsed, his crimson eyes dimming. But as he fell, his hand pressed a small device, a red light blinking. A deafening explosion rocked the crystal core, the ground splitting. "He triggered a destruct sequence!" Nathan shouted, pulling Kaelith toward the shuttle. "We have 3 minutes before this place blows!" They raced through the rubble, shattered crystal glinting like stellar blood underfoot. Therion and the guards followed, breathing heavily. Another explosion tilted the ground, and Nathan gripped Kaelith's hand tighter, feeling her pulse through the bond. The shuttle loomed ahead, its pilot opening the hatch, shouting, "Hurry!" They leaped aboard, the shuttle lifting off as the crystal core collapsed, its radiant blue light fading into darkness, like a dying star. Aboard the Concordia, Nathan and Kaelith sat in the medical bay, bandaging wounds. She embraced him, both panting, sweat and blood mingling. "I was wrong not to trust you," Kaelith whispered, her voice trembling, her crimson eyes softening, sincere. "There won't be another time." Nathan gave a faint smile, his eyes glinting with confidence despite the pain in his shoulder. "There better not be," he replied, his voice low, laced with warmth. They returned to Velis, the city's crystal light welcoming them, but the air was heavy. In the grand meeting chamber of the Peace Tower, Nathan and Kaelith stood before the Zoryn Council and Terran Command. Therion, towering, his silver skin gleaming, stepped forward, his crimson eyes sweeping the room. "Valthor betrayed us," he declared, his voice resounding, sharp as steel. "But his actions do not represent Zoryn. The bond of Lady Kaelith and Captain Voss proves our species can coexist." Colonel Elena Carter, the Terran commander, nodded, her gaze sharp. "There will be opposition," she said, her voice firm. "But we'll make it work." She turned to Nathan, a flicker of pride in her eyes. "Voss, you exceeded expectations. Your report on the Syndicate will help us dismantle their operations in the Forbidden Zone." Kaelith stepped forward, standing beside Nathan, her crimson eyes locking onto the Zoryn Council. "Our bond is not a threat," she said, her voice steady, resonant. "It's a bridge. I request the Council permit limited access to sacred sites in the Forbidden Zone, under joint Zoryn-Terran oversight." Some Council members murmured, their crimson eyes wavering, but Therion raised a hand, silencing the room. "I support this proposal," Therion said, his voice deep, carrying the weight of millennia. "The bond of my daughter and Captain Voss heralds a new era. We will not let fear divide us further." He turned to Nathan, his eyes glinting with respect. "Captain, you've proven humans are not only strong but trustworthy." Nathan nodded, his gaze flickering to Kaelith. "The honor is mine," he said, his voice even, but through the bond, he felt her joy, like a river of light. The Council and Terran Command agreed to negotiate a new treaty, but Nathan knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The Syndicate remained at large, and those opposing peace would not relent. After the meeting, Nathan and Kaelith stood on a balcony of the Peace Tower, Velis's blue light bathing them. She took his hand, the warmth of her silver skin flowing through him. "We've changed everything," she said, her crimson eyes softening, sparkling like crystal. Nathan squeezed her hand, his gaze locking with hers. "Together," he said, his voice deep, a vow. Beneath Velis's starry sky, their crystal bond thrummed, not just a personal connection, but a guiding flame for their species. Yet Nathan sensed through the bond a flicker of unease from Kaelith, not about them, but about secrets still hidden in the Forbidden Zone's shadows. This battle was over, but a greater one loomed, and they would face it together. The balcony of the Peace Tower shimmered under Velis's blue light, its crystal spires reflecting like countless captive stars. Nathan, Voss, and Kaelith stood side by side, a gentle breeze stirring her metallic hair. Their crystal bond pulsed steadily, a shared heartbeat, a reminder of the trials they'd overcome, from tense meeting rooms to the perilous ritual chamber. The city below buzzed with life, but up here, it was just them and the endless starry sky. "We've made history, Captain," Kaelith said, her crimson eyes sparkling, like a star's core reflecting pride. Her voice was deep, carrying the weight of one who'd altered her people's fate. Nathan turned, his sharp gaze locking with hers. "Humans don't do well standing still," he replied, a confident smile flickering, like a challenge. "We'll keep breaking barriers together." Kaelith tilted her head, her eyes glinting with the familiar mischief of their first encounter. "I look forward to it, human," she said, her voice light but laced with an unquenchable fire. She squeezed his hand, the warmth of her silver skin flowing through him, like the energy from the crystal pool days ago. Through the bond, Nathan felt her joy, but also a spark of resolve, not just for them, but for the future of their species. Below, Velis thrived, its glowing pathways leading to diplomatic towers where a new treaty was being negotiated. The Zoryn Council and Terran Command, led by Therion and Colonel Carter, were crafting an unprecedented framework, allowing Zoryn's access to sacred sites in the Forbidden Zone under joint oversight. But Nathan knew peace was fragile. The Orion Syndicate lurked, and those opposing the Zoryn-Human alliance would not yield easily. "My father believes our bond is the key," Kaelith said, her crimson eyes sweeping the city. "But not everyone agrees. Some Zoryns see me as a traitor for choosing you." Nathan raised an eyebrow, his gaze unwavering. "And what do you think?" he asked, his voice low, probing. Kaelith smiled, her eyes softening. "I think I chose rightly," she replied, her voice sincere. "You're not just a human. You're part of me." Her words gave Nathan pause, the weight of their crystal bond sinking in. He drew her closer, his hand brushing her silver cheek, smooth as velvet, warm with her heartbeat. "Humans don't have rituals like the crystal bonding," he said, his voice low. "But we believe in actions. I'm here, Kaelith, not just for duty." Through the bond, he let her feel the truth in his words, loyalty, devotion, and a deeper emotion undefined before her. Kaelith leaned into his hand, her crimson eyes sparkling. "Then we'll create our own ritual," she said, her voice deep, a promise. "One not just for Zoryns or humans, but for us." Nathan smiled, his gaze locking with hers. "I'm in," he said, his voice firm, like a soldier accepting a new challenge. A signal from Nathan's communicator interrupted, breaking the moment. Colonel Carter's holographic image appeared, her face stern. "Voss, we need you and Kaelith at command," she said, her voice sharp. "New intel on the Syndicate. They're massing forces near the Forbidden Zone's edge, possibly for a retaliatory strike." Nathan nodded, his gaze steely. "We're on our way, Colonel." The hologram vanished, and Nathan turned to Kaelith. "Looks like no rest for us," he said, his voice low, but his eyes glinted with readiness. Kaelith smiled, her crimson eyes flaring with battle-ready fire. "Good," she said, her voice sharp. "I don't like quiet for too long." She took his hand, pulling him toward the corridor to command, their steps synchronized, like warriors ready for a new fight. In the command center, Therion and Carter studied a holographic map of the Forbidden Zone, red blips marking Syndicate positions. "They're stronger than we thought," Carter said, her gaze sharp. "But your bond could be an advantage. Intel suggests the Syndicate fears your coordination." Therion nodded, his crimson eyes sweeping Nathan and Kaelith. "Your bond is more than a symbol," he said. "It's a weapon. Use it to protect what we're building." Nathan and Kaelith exchanged a glance, their crystal bond thrumming, affirming their unity. "We're ready," Nathan said, his voice low, eyes fixed on Kaelith. She nodded, her crimson eyes blazing. "Together," she said, her voice firm, a vow. Under Velis's crystal light, they stepped from the Peace Tower, heading toward an uncharted future. The galaxy ahead was fraught with challenges, from Syndicate plots to fractures within Zoryn and Terran ranks. But with human resilience and Zoryn's strength, Nathan and Kaelith were more than allies. They were an unyielding flame, ready to burn through any barrier. Their bond, forged in ritual and battle, was a guiding light, not just for them, but for a new era of peace and unity.